Well, if there's ever a time we need to talk about this subject, it is now. We have so many broken marriages, so many lonely women who are just seeking for just a conversation. I mean, just a touch, just a minute from their husband. So I wanted to share this message tonight, and I pray that it bless you. I want to share this piece that came from an excerpt from a letter that was received by a pastor, and this Arthur Weldon Hardenbrook illustrates this. And so I want you to hear me clearly as I read this piece. It really touched my heart. And then I want to share a couple of things from this message. Read as follow. It is entitled, Letter from a Lonely Lady. The kids are in bed. There's nothing on TV tonight. I asked my husband if he minds if I turn the tube off. He grunts. As I walk to the set and look at him, my mind is racing. Maybe, just maybe, tonight we'll talk. I mean, we'll have a conversation that consists of more than my usual question with his mumbled one-word answer, or more accurately, no answer at all. Silence. I live in a world with continuous noise, but between him and myself, silence. Please, oh God, please, let him open up. I initiate once again for the 1,000th time. My heart pounds. Oh, how can I word it this time right? What can I say that will open the door to just talk? I don't have to have a deep, meaningful conversation, just something. As I open my mouth, he gets up and goes to the bedroom. The door closes behind him. The light showing under the door gives way to darkness. So does my hope. I sit alone on the couch. My heart begins to ache. I'm tired of being alone. Hey, I'm married. I've been for years. Why, Lord, do I sit alone? That really touched me, that message. And, I wanted to kind of talk about the letter from a lonely lady because there's so many who are missing, that real, true, intimate time with their mates. And I thought it was very, very appropriate for me to talk about this now, especially because it's Father's Day weekend coming up. And I wanted to make sure that even though you may feel alone or lonely or rejected, I want to talk about your emotional bank account and how important it is that men understand that. So if you're listening, I'm really talking to the men today, but I want you to hear what I'm having to say. Every human being has what has been really, really largely called an emotional tank. That is a love bank or an emotional bank account. Personally, I love Stephen Covey's term. He called it an emotional bank account. And in this emotional account, we take deposits and withdrawals like a savings account. And every time we think about ourselves, when we come together, we are making deposits and withdrawals in your relationship. If you don't greet your mate cheerfully, you make a withdrawal. If he or she tells you to forget something, or you don't want to talk about it, or something important that they would like for you to do, and you don't do it, or you act like you don't remember, this makes a withdrawal. But if you help her or help him to do something that they feel is significant for them, you're making a deposit. And even if you surprise him or her, with something that you don't often do, maybe with a candy bar or flower, or take something and do that she's been asking you to do for I don't know how long, this makes a deposit. Doing what we say, spending time with each other, engaging in meaningful conversation, helping each other out, walking closely with the Lord, becoming each other's soulmate, keeping others fit, being fun and faithful as a sex partner because it's your spouse. These represent some examples of areas we can make deposits or withdrawals. I want to talk about this because couples who don't get along, don't feel much love, or are considering separation or divorce, they do so because the emotional bank account. Yes, the emotional bank account of one or both of them is running low, or it is very empty. Couples divorce when they are emotionally bankrupt. This is the reason why their mate's saying, I can't do it anymore. Doesn't it make sense to make sure we have built up reserves of love and trust for one another? In the same way, you could think about being a businessman who's always late paying his bills. That's really silly. And so also is the husband who doesn't make deposits into his wife's emotional bank account, especially when it's due. Every one of us is going to make withdrawals in a relationship. The issue is how to make deposits faster than withdrawals. Everything you do with or to your wife or your husband is either a deposit or a withdrawal. Let's make a commitment, just listening on the sound of my voice, to remember this concept and to build up reserves of love and trust in the account of your wife or your husband. Right now, today, what is the balance in your emotional bank account? What would you estimate the balance of your husband or your wife's emotional bank account? Well, let's talk about time and conversation. This is what she described just now. She's lonely. And so two great problems that lurk the bushes of every marriage. First, we don't carve out enough time to come together. These two, time and conversation. Second, when we are together, you think about that. Think about when y'all get together. Your conversation is not meaningful. And tragically, when you're together, you often don't connect. And in the same room, there you are. I don't care how many times you go in that room, emotionally, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're together. The most precious commodity that a couple can have is time. The greatest gift that they can give one another is a piece of their time. The most insensitive offense against each other is having someone waste their time. Each second that having someone waste our time is very, very offensive. And that second ticks off the clock. It ticks off our choices of how we spend this gift of time. One of the main ways that we should look at concerning our spouses is to measure the quality of your relationship with them. It's by the quality of time you spend with them. And so think about this, just for a minute. What is your wife or your husband possibly thinking about? Or what would he or she want or need more than any other single thing today? What do you think about that? Is it some meaningful conversation? Wouldn't you think that would be one thing? I want to share how important it is just listening to this letter from this lonely woman. This woman talked about a time for just talk. She said she needed time and talk. She had a deficit. So if she had this deficit, it was inevitable that she felt like her emotional bank account was very empty. The principal value of time and talk is that they fill our spouses up with emotional love. That's what it does, if you think about it. One friend and his wife have what they call a 6 o'clock rule. If he is at home by 6, he has to take her out to dinner. Another friend walks with his wife in the morning. Another man and his wife do daily devotions together. And when the party is finally over, they take the crepe paper and they droop it and the horns and hats and they throw them about the floor, and there will be only 2 rocking chairs sitting side by side. Isn't that something? That's talking about you two. You are the only 2 who are really in these things together. What are some ways you could ensure that you will spend more time together with your spouse? Think about that. Most people think it's the real big things. They think it's the expensive things. But when we look at it, time is intimacy. And that is the next thing I want to talk about, intimacy. The wives, we know that many times that we'll have to always try to get that foreplay to come when we have nothing else but time, because they're not listening to us most of the time. But one of the things that we can begin to understand, a simple thank you, a simple I love you. See, the husband is a thermostat in the marriage, and the wife is a thermometer. He controls whether the climate is hot or cold, and she adjusts the temperature. If you think about it, she adjusts the temperature that he sets. And he can make it saucy and romantic, or he can make it cold and boring. In many of the bedrooms today, I can guarantee you I've been there and done that. It was cold because things were just not the way we wanted it, because we stopped talking. Every wife's dream is that romantic affections of her knight in shining armor will not stiffen up like creaking rusty armor left out in the rain. So what does a man need to know to satisfy this wonderful woman that he's chosen? The overarching goal of a marriage is, biblically speaking, oneness. And they will become one flesh. Genesis 2:24 emphasizes this. I am only saying. Oneness is a synonym for intimacy. Intimacy means I know who you are, and the deepest levels, in the deepest part of your soul, and I accept you. But we become one flesh only by loving our wives and our spouses 3 ways: morally, emotionally, and physically. And so this is when agape love seeps in and prayerfully become active. See, agape love is moral love. Moral love, because it is agape love, it is the first of the Greek words for love. Agape love means an assent of the will to love, like as a matter of principle, a matter of duty and prosperity. It is also the kind of love God commands husbands to have for their wives. See, agape love, what it does, it is the right thing. It does what is right. It demonstrates. It don't just talk. It has responsibility and commitment. To not love in this sense is morally wrong. We have a duty to love our wives, men and women. It will come as no surprise that our wives want more than duty. Yeah, they want more than sex. They also want more than just romance. Romantic love is both emotional and physical, but they want conversation too. And then phileo is another level of love, which is emotional love. Emotional love in this phileo, this type of love means to be a friend. You know you were great friends before you got married, weren't you? And so to be a friend means to be fond of, to have affection for. It denotes personal attachment as a matter of sentiment or feeling. See, phileo love is to love as sentiment or feeling. It is to love in an affectionate sense. It means to love our wives or love your husband because you like being around them. You phileo the love because you want to. It demonstrates that you really care. And so if agape means to love with the head, then phileo means to love with the heart. We have a duty. You have a duty, lady. You have a duty, man, to love your wife, to love your spouse, your husband emotionally. Emotional love includes non-sexual. That means you can touch me, you can hug me, you can kiss me. You can do that to your spouses. You can pat. We're talking particularly to the woman, about the woman today, because it's the lonely woman. You can squeeze her. I used to hate it when my husband used to pinch my rear end. I want to jab slap him. But that was a way that he was giving me this petting kind of, touch, and hand holding. This is so, we call it square today or old fashioned, but it's still showing an expression of love. Emotional love means small routine kindness, like holding the door or washing the dishes or changing the oil or washing the car. We won't leave out taking the trash out. But many times, we as women, we tend to wonder why I can't get what you started in the beginning with me, showing me this type of phileo love. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 19.6% of married women worked in 1950. And then by 1990, 74% of all women between the ages of 25 and 54 were in the workforce, and 58% of them were married. In other words, the norm in the 1950s was for wives not to work. That's been gone. While the norm today is that our wives are just as likely to work as the men are working. And if your wife works, she is just as tired at the end of the day as you are, bro. So be sure to share the loud sound of love. Be sure and share the load even of home life responsibilities. And then the eros, I'm hoping I can get done with this for you, lady, who may be dealing with this loneliness. And I pray you, bro, is paying attention on some things you need to reconstruct in this marriage. And so the eros, the physical love, or the eros, this physical love is eros because it means sexual love. Because why? Because it is God's gift. And even commands us because we're married. You're a married couple, according to 1 Corinthians 7:3 and 5. It is the consummate. That's right, the consummate. The expression of intimacy. That means you get the icing on the cake. How they say you get the whole cow now, not just the milk. This eros love means to love in a sexual sense. And we have a duty, man, wife, you have a duty to love your spouses physically. Men, you need to understand, there goes my bell, you need to understand that you need, and yeah, men need to be loved. Yes, they do. But so do your wife, because a lot of men, I call it slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. There's no intimacy. But men need to be loved physically so that they can love emotionally. You hear me, woman? And then you, lady, on the other hand, you need to be loved emotionally so that you can love physically. So, bro, I hope you're hearing me. These emotional moves you need to make so that you can get the physical, what you need sexually from your wife. And as a spiritual leader of your home, you need to make sure that you take the leadership to love your wife in the way that you need to be loved. And so don't give her something because you're angry or expect something from her because you say that she's your wife and she's required to do this. Then now she become a victim of what they call spousal rape. When she don't want to, because now you're doing this out of the wrong emotion. It needs to be, emotion driven, meaning that you want to make sure that you met her emotional needs. And so you need to achieve oneness by loving each other morally, emotionally, and physically. And so how do you do that then, Dr. Murphy? How do they get there? Well, intimacy and oneness are not so much built by this big thing that we do. Yeah, I talked about a couple of things a few minutes ago, like taking trips and buying your clothes and diamonds and all that stuff. And that's by the little things that you do, both of you. This will constantly, day in, day out, they make a difference. So what are the little things that build the intimacy? Well, you can try some of these things, like simple, like we all see people do on these sitcoms or whatever. They buy flowers. Or they look directly into their eyes when they're talking to you. Meaning the men today are notorious to not look the woman in the eye. They're just looking at other things while they're talking to them. Or they're looking away or totally ignoring them. But look her in her eyes. Or look at him in his eyes when he speaks to you. Smile when they glance at you. Do that googly stuff you did when you were dating. Make a little wink to let them know you love them or that you're ready to go and get it on in the bedroom because you love them that much. Now you want to show them that love in your emotion, and he wants to show you physically. But you think about that. Occasionally, do your little, how they say, your duck look, lips, get that kiss, blow them a kiss, and say, I love you. And don't just say it then because you're ready to become intimate. But say I love you every day. Hold hands. Embrace each other. Won't you catch the door for her? I never in my life seen so many men who just let the door just slam on them. They going in, beating the woman in the door and just stand there saying, hurry up, come on. Where did that go? What happened to the gents today? You think about where you are now. Think about where you were when you met him or her. Catch that door for her. Open that car door for her. Make the bed. That was a situation I went through when I was married. I couldn't stand because he was a slouch in the room. But I tell you, when he began to make the bed, it just made me so happy because I probably was OCD real bad back then. But, I'm still OCD a little bit too. And you probably are too and don't want to admit it. But anyway, help her make the bed. And then clear the dinner table. Help. Do something. Don't just eat and just be like a complete slave driver. She's there to serve you because she's your helpmeet, but you need to do something too. You got the picture. I pray you do. And so you want to build intimacy by doing these little things in a single little direction that you're headed to making her smile or making her feel emotionally connected to you. And so the greatest decision that you as a man can make to build a strong marriage and a family is to make your wife your top priority first after God, but before all other things, And so remember, your wife is the only one who is truly in this thing with you to the end. It don't matter what you go through. You remember she's going to be there for you. She's going to be there to encourage you. Now, we do have some that just feel like ain't going to do nothing but want their way. But you have a woman that's going to be there for you ultimately in the end. And all others, when they phase out of your life, when they have talked about you or treated you bad and she's even warned you and told you what God has said, but you continued on, just like they phased out, she's still going to be sitting right there waiting to tell you, I love you and I'm here. And so in the next time that you get in touch with your spouse, I want you to remember a couple of things. I want you to think on what I said and imagine this, because nobody wants to imagine what I'm about to say to you now, because it can become so true so quickly. You think about this. Let's imagine for a moment that we're talking about your situation or your difficulty. What could happen even now to your marriage? What about if this situation was you? That the further you sink into the sins of neglect, the further you allow your wife to seek in despair, as I read that letter at the very beginning, she may or may not have an affair, but guess what? Those things are rarely planned in advance anyway. Same thing for the man. But for some reason, somebody will screw up and her courage will begin to faint. And then on a fateful, tearful day of unsure emotion, she decides the marriage is dead and she's going to ask you for a divorce. Numb to the bone, there you are. You drive away from the house, blinded by your tears, terrified by your fears. You stay in a cheesy rat hole motel for the next few days, thinking it's all a mistake, a nightmare. And then while you're sitting alone, before dawn or before morning comes even, you haven't been up all night or have a crack of sleep, soon reality sits in. It strikes you like a thunderbolt. And then a sickening starts to hit you. You feel clammy. You feel sick. Everything is creepy under your skin and you don't know what to think. Your head starts hurting and you're getting angry now. That how dare her tell me to leave? Or why did I leave? And then that next morning, you search the classified ads until you find a cheap, dimly lit, furnished, one-bedroom apartment that doesn't require a lease. And now, here we go. A lawyer calling you. And so now the bile of betrayal starts to rise in your throat. Now you're getting all mad and you're ready to start cussing and thinking about what she's not going to get and what he's not going to get. And then you get so angry to the point of rage in your chest, and now your chest is hurting. You feel like you're having a heart attack. And so you think, how in the world could she do this to me? And you wonder, what in the world did I do? And then you get to talk to your bro. He started to suggest you need to get you a lawyer, man. He started to give you the name of a real lawyer that's going to really be a slam dunk on her. And so you meet this so-called money shark who testified that he eats women like your wife for lunch. And so he wants, after a bitter 8-month custody battle, this is what he wants you to do. Then here you are. Your wife gets the house after all that money you paid. She gets the house and the kids, and you get the mortgage payment and the child support, and neither one of which you can afford. Isn't that something? So the judge allows you to see your kids every other weekend. The judge deciding how much that you can see your kids even. And you got to be out of your mind is what you're thinking. What gives them the right? And then after a few months, the children complain that they don't want to come to your place as much anymore because there is nothing to do. Besides, they have their regular friends back in their neighborhood. And then a year later, she's already remarried. He showers her with dates and flowers and so much touching, just what her emotion needs. He buys your kids all types of gifts. Slowly, subtly, you watch their capacity for fatherly affection shift from you toward him. You can't stand sharing this love that your babies are now giving him. It is driving you crazy. And then now you realize that your fate, the consequence of not working at your marriage, is to watch another man raise your children. It is almost too much to bear. Guess what? The Bible says, if anyone does not provide for his relatives, talking about your children, and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith, and he is worse than an unbeliever, according to 1 Timothy 5:8. And there are many ways we provide for our families. Yes, it's money. Yes, it's protection, education, spiritual training, value systems, emotional support, food, shelter, and most important, love. Just to name a few, okay? But what, though, are the greatest needs, and how can we best provide for them? I want you to know, if 4 out of 10 Christian marriages get ugly enough to end in divorce, then many more couples must also be in trouble that don't get that far. How about you? I want you to think about what you've heard today. I want you to think about what you can do to make some deposits of intimacy in your wife or in your spouse's emotional bank account. Over the next several days, I want you to think about some suggestions. I already said a few. Buy some flowers, look directly into their eyes. Won't you do some touching and talking? Won't you say, I love you every day, because you know not what day holds. Catch the door for her. Help make the bed. Clean the table. Give her some kisses. Hold her tight at night when you don't have to always thinking that it's fixing to go physical. Right now, today, think about it. What is the true balance in your emotional bank account? And what would you estimate is the balance of your wife's emotional bank account? Are you really spending enough time? Are you really talking? Are you really being intimate? Are you really spending time with your family? Are you really leading them according to the purposes that God has for you as a man and as a father of your home? We won't leave out being a spouse. Well, God bless you. I pray that this helped you. Please share it with some of the other bros. Because we women, that sad message that I read about the letter from a lonely lady really touched me. So what are you doing? What are you possibly thinking about even now, about what you've heard in your imaginary, oh my God, divorce that could happen even to you? Heaven forbid. God bless you. I pray blessings over your marriage and your family.